When you were a kid, things were simple. A is for apple.
B is for ball.
You learn to count. 1, 2, 3.
You learn to add.
But you can't always have your apple and eat it too.
Someone had to come along and introduce fractions.
Then when you think you've got everything under control, they throw in decimals.
And as if that wasn't hard enough, they toss in percents.
Fractions, decimals, percents, oh my. It's hard juggling everything you need to know about these concepts.
But you know what? They're really just different ways of looking at the same concept.
They're all ratios. You can substitute a fraction for a decimal for a percent for a fraction. You get the picture.
Juggling your knowledge of fractions, decimals, and percents may seem difficult, but it's amazing what you can do once you have the right skills.
Fractions, decimals, percents. All different ways of looking at the same concept.
So why should we know all three?
Good question.
Why not?
Bad answer. Look, suppose you're a baseball player, and you're a tremendous hitter, but you couldn't catch to save your life. Not good. But if you could hit, catch, and throw, if you polished all your skills,
You can be a superstar, and the same is true if you develop your skills with fractions, decimals, and percents.
So, let's get on our way to the mathematical Hall of Fame by starting with fractions. Before the wheel, before the pyramids, before your parents were born, there were fractions. As soon as people could count up sets of objects, they wanted to know how to divide them up.
The earliest use of fractions was to represent parts of a whole.
If I had one piece of fruit and wanted to divide it among 8 people, each person would get an eighth.
In a fraction, the top number is the part, and the bottom number is the whole.
But fractions can be thought of another way too. Suppose you had $50, and you wanted to divide it among 3 people. That situation suggests a fraction as well. Whenever we compare one quantity to another, we can use a fraction. The comparison is called a ratio. Ratios come in all sizes, and here's a stylish one, 4/5. And here's an artist's rendition.
Here's another fraction, 8/10, a distinct family resemblance. 8/10 and 4/5 represent the same ratio. They're what we call equivalent fractions. Actually, the family of fractions that equal 4/5 is infinitely large. 4/5 is the reduced form of the ratio. The rest carry around a little extra baggage.
Let's take a closer look at 8/10. See that 10 in the denominator? That tells us this number has special significance, since our entire number system is based on the number 10.
The decimal system. Deci means 10. The decimal system is cool because the value of a number is determined not only by the value of its digits, but by where they are placed.
You know the number 21 has a different value than the number 12. We take this for granted, but there are number systems that don't work that way. When the denominator of a fraction is a multiple of 10, that's called a decimal fraction.
And with decimal fractions, we can take the denominator away and just let the decimal point tell us the value of the number.
In a decimal number, the digits to the right of the decimal point are fractions less than 1. In other words, these digits represent parts of a whole.
Same as fractions. In fact, you could rewrite any decimal as a fraction.
Whose denominator is a multiple of 10. In other words, all decimals represent ratios.
Fractions and decimals. Both represent parts of a whole. Both represent ratios.
And with a few simple procedures, you can convert back and forth between them. To convert from a decimal to a fraction, use the digits to the right of the decimal point as a numerator.
The denominator will be a power of 10, a 1 followed by as many zeros as there were spaces to the right of the decimal point.
And remember, always reduce if possible.
Keep in mind that this procedure works only for terminating decimals, like this one. There are other types of decimals, such as repeating decimals, but more on that later.
If you can convert a decimal to a fraction, it stands to reason that the flip side must be true. You can convert a fraction to a decimal. Fractions can be thought of as ratios, or as parts of a whole. But there's another way we use fractions.
Fractions are used as expressions of division. 1/4 is the same as 1 divided by 4. So to convert a fraction to a decimal, just divide the denominator into the numerator. 1/4 becomes 0.25. You could even use a calculator to do it. 2/3 becomes,
0.66666. A repeating decimal. It goes on and on and on.
Save yourself some ink and write it like this.
Or if you want, round it off. To the nearest 10 is 0.7. To the nearest 100 is 0.67. To the nearest 1,000 is 0.667. And to the nearest...
All right already. The decimal point is made.
Fractions have their uses. Sometimes you may want to do your calculations with fractions so that you get an exact answer and don't have to round.
And decimals are certainly useful as well.
One thing that's great about working with decimals is that operations with decimals are done the same way as operations with the whole numbers that you're used to. You can even use a calculator to do your work.
But look around and it becomes clear. One of the most critical concepts for solving problems in the real world is percents.
The name percent tells you what it is. In Latin, cent means 100. Percents let us compare the relative efficiency or frequency of events by giving them a common denominator of 100.
Just as you can have miles per hour or goals per game, you can have a quantity that's a percent.
Percents are comparisons on a common scale of 100.
Another way to look at them is as parts of a whole. When we have all of something, we call that 100%, one whole.
So, when we have a smaller percentage, it's a piece of the whole, or a fraction with a denominator of 100.
The connection between fractions and percents is obvious. Percents are fractions with a common denominator of 100. To convert from a percent to a fraction, put the number over a denominator of 100 and drop the percent sign. And if you can, reduce. What could be simpler?
I'll tell you what, converting from a percent to a decimal.
Quick lesson in logic. If you can convert percents to fractions and fractions to decimals,
You must be able to convert percents to decimals.
That's right. Just move the decimal point 2 places to the left and drop the percent sign.
simple.
Now we're on a roll. Whatever can be done can be undone. To convert a decimal to a percent, move the decimal point 2 places to the right.
Let's see. Percent to fraction. Percent to decimal. Decimal to percent. That just leaves...
Converting fractions to percents. Remember how to go from fractions to decimals?
To convert a fraction to a decimal, just divide the denominator into the numerator. You could even use a calculator to do it.
Right. So to go from a fraction to a percent, just divide. Then move the decimal point 2 places to the right.
And don't forget the percent sign.
There you have it. Fractions, decimals, percents. Thoroughly connected.
Like 3 sides of the same coin. If you can deal with one, well, good for you.
But if you can deal with all 3 at once, then you've got skills you can really use.
To solve problems.
In the real world.
What if I asked you, which would you rather have? 7.5% of this pile of money, or 1/12 of the pile?
Well, what if I said I was going to cut your allowance in half? But next month, I would increase it by 50%.
Or what if you had a 345 batting average and you went 2 for 5? Does the average go up or down?
Having a handle on fractions, decimals, and percents will help you solve problems like this in a flash.
You've just seen how they're all connected. Now find out if your mind is quicker than your eye.
When you build something, you need a firm foundation. Your understanding of numbers serves as the foundation for learning math.
You also need the right tools and resources, like the operations of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division.
And you need some kind of glue to hold them all together. In other words, all the parts must be connected.
Fractions, decimals, and percents have different uses, so you need to be adept at working with all three.
In textbooks, the problems are often neatly grouped into categories. All the percent problems go here. All the decimal problems go here. And all the fraction problems go here. And every problem has a neat, clean answer.
But in real life, it's a little more complicated.
Problems come at you from all sorts of angles.
And big red banners, such as this, just don't exist.
You're on your own, and the real world is a very cruel place. Some problems may involve a fraction and a decimal.
Or a decimal and a percent.
There are even problems that hit you with all three.
Suppose you go into a store with a half-price sale.
You see a shirt you like on a rack with a sign that says, all items on this rack, an additional 20% off.
The price tag says $59.95.
Naturally, you didn't bring a calculator to the store with you. Now, how much are you going to pay?
A problem like this contains fractions, decimals, and percents. Sounds difficult.
But, with your understanding of how they're connected,
A problem like this is really no problem at all.
your knowledge of one ratio concept can take the mystery out of other ratio concepts.
Understanding the connections lets you think on your feet.
Think for a moment about adding.
And subtracting.
Fractions. Simple enough. Just convert them all to equivalent fractions with a common denominator. Then add.
Or subtract.
Now think about adding.
Or subtracting.
Decimals, even easier. Just line up the decimal points and add digits with the same place value.
Or subtract.
A calculator could do it in less than a second.
We're here to tell you that those procedures for fractions and decimals are one and the same. When you line up and add digits that have the same place value, you're really adding fractions that have common denominators.
The same thing goes for subtraction.
Remember, digits one place to the right of the decimal point are fractions whose denominators are 10. Digits two places to the right have denominators of 100, and the pattern continues.
So when you add this column, you're adding all the tenths, all the hundredths, and so on.
Or subtracting. Or subtracting.
You know, the connection to adding percents is even easier to see. Remember, percents are, by definition, fractions over 100.
So adding percents is the same as adding fractions with a common denominator of 100.
Here's one for you. We have red, blue, and yellow balls. 1/4 of these balls are red. 2/5 are blue. So what percent is yellow?
We can give your answer in a minute, but first let's talk a little bit about approach.
You might be sitting out there asking yourself, if all these concepts are connected, why can't I convert every problem to a decimal problem and let a calculator do my work?
Well, you could, but it's not very realistic, or even very practical. Do you carry a calculator every time you go to a restaurant, or watch the news, or go to the store?
And there are some problems that are really easy to do in your head with just a working knowledge of fractions, decimals, and percents.
Now let's see what we've got. 1/4 of the balls are red. That's 25%. 2/5 of the balls are blue. That's 40%. 25% plus 40%, that's 65%. So 65% of the balls are not yellow.
But remember, 100% represents one whole, or all the balls.
So if 65% are not yellow, then the percentage of yellow balls is 100% minus 65%, or 35%.
I just thought of another reason why you shouldn't go through life just relying on a calculator.
Go ahead, tell us.
You can make a mistake working with a calculator as easily as working it out in your head.
Really? How many times have you dialed the wrong number?
Suppose you have to multiply two decimals. Say 0.88 times 0.05. The rule is simple enough. Multiply the numbers
And let the number of decimal places in the factors determine the number of decimal places in the product.
So I do it on my calculator and get 0.44.
Hold it. Think about what you're doing, man. 0.44 is half of 0.88.
Yeah, so?
But you are multiplying by 0.05. You want only 5/100ths, or 1/20th of 0.88. 88 over 100 times 1 over 20. Your answer's going to have to be a lot smaller.
10 times smaller.
See, a calculator is just a tool. It's only as accurate as the stubby fingers pushing the buttons. And if you slip and misplace just one decimal point,
Your answer won't even be in the right zip code.
the most expensive calculator in the whole world is no match for the power of your own mind.
Here's a magic trick. I'm going to divide 3/4 by 1/4. Flip the second fraction and multiply. And the answer is 3.
Amazing!
Isn't it? I divided one number by another number, and the answer is bigger than the two numbers I started with.
How can this be? I'd like some verification, please.
Let's take a look on the calculator, Cam. 0.75 divided by 0.25. 3 again.
You did it again. You took a small number, divided it by a smaller number. How do you get an answer that's bigger than them both?
What do I have to do? Draw you a picture? 3/4 divided by 1/4. How many of these are in here? 1, 2, 3.
It's not enough just to memorize rote formulas for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of ratios.
What's more important is to understand what's going on. Whether you're working with fractions or decimals, you want to be familiar with the patterns that arise.
Multiplying by a number greater than 1 makes positive numbers get bigger.
But multiplying by a fraction,
Or a decimal,
less than 1,
but greater than 0.
makes them smaller.
With division, you get just the opposite. Divide by a number greater than 1, and the result is a smaller number than you started with.
Divide by a fraction less than 1,
But greater than 0.
and you actually produce bigger numbers. Nobody walks around with all the answers, but with an appreciation for the patterns and the connections among these ratios, you'll be able to avoid mistakes.
And if you make them, correct them.
Wait a minute. What about percents?
Come on, you gotta know by now that if something works for fractions, and if it works for decimals,
Then it must work for percents.
Say you take 30% of your paycheck to spend, and you set aside 20% of that to go to the arcade. What percent of your paycheck goes to fight the never-ending battle against space aliens and ninja warriors?
what's 20% of 30%?
Multiply.
20% times 30%, that's 6%. Surprised? Remember that these percents are ratios less than 1.
Small times small gives you smaller.
In essence, it's like taking 30% of a pie, then cutting off 20% of that. That's 6% of the original pie. Making mistakes is easy.
Especially when you don't take time to really understand the problem.
But if you make the effort to learn how fractions, decimals, and percents are connected,
You'll be able to solve any problem, even if the numbers look like this.
Or this.
the skills presented in this video require agility, strength, quickness, concentration.
And we don't mean the performer's skills.
We mean the math skills.
And as any good performer knows, There's only one way to get really good at something.
Practice.
Practice.
Practice.